You guys. TGC is actually a really old company. It started back in 2006. Before we made Sky, we have made 3 PlayStation games: Flow, Flower, and Journey. I think some of you have not been born yet. We haven't released that game. After 2012, we started working on Sky. It was not a smooth development. It took us 7 years to launch the game. So 2019 is when the game first came out, and now we've been making the game for another 4 years to keep the game going. So if you go to our website, we tell people what backend company do is to create timeless interactive entertainment that tells heartwarming stories for an audience of all ages and inspire human connections worldwide. So I want to talk about the North Star of Sky. So back in 2012, Christmas week, that's when we just launched Journey. I want to give you a context. Once we launched Journey in March 18th in 2012, we have to close the company for a brief period of time because we run out of money. We have to lay off every single employee. We use up all our savings to give Journey 1 extra year to make Journey as great as we can. But at the same time, the company cannot sustain itself. And you can imagine I would have a lot of frustration and anger because the Journey game is the top selling game on the PlayStation at that year, but we have no money. This is due to somehow the publishing deal works, and we have to let go all the talented people. I'm actually at the bottom of my life at Christmas 2012. I was visiting Beijing in China, where I grew up, and stayed at one of my friend's house. So I woke up on Christmas that day. I got a bunch of emails from people who I don't recognize. They're all like IGN editors. I don't know if you guys read IGN. If you play console game, it's a gaming website where people review games and vote for awards. And these editors tell me, they say, hey, you don't know who I am, but I'm so excited. I just can't not tell you that your game Journey has won the Game of the Year. Usually we would not tell you ahead of time, and we just thought there's no way an indie game made by 12 people could win the Game of the Year. But I'm so glad I voted for you. I'm so glad everybody voted, and your game is the Game of the Year. So I was feeling a lot of a sense of love. And it's not people love me, it's people loving the games that we put so much heart and souls into, and basically bankrupt the company to make. And the fact they are so excited for this game to actually be recognized. And so I have this feeling of, even though I'm in Beijing, I feel I'm connected with these excited players. I mean, in this case, they are the editors from IGN. They love something so much that we put our hearts and soul into, that I felt like I was loved. For a moment, I feel like I'm not alone. And in my vision, I can feel this connection goes all the way across the globe. I can feel the connections from California, from the IGN headquarters. It was kind of a transcending experience for myself. And so as a game creator, what we love to do is to capture real life emotions and experience and share it with others. And so at the time I was like, I really feel I'm not alone, and how can I share this experience with players, with people with my friends, or with all the people I know. And so I started to look up on the internet, like, what is this feeling? And there's a definition of genuine human connection. It says when two or more people choose to engage in a vulnerable interactions, where each person is heard, seen, known, and valued, then you feel better about yourself or the world after you have been with them. I definitely felt better about myself and the people around me. And so this overwhelming sense of gratitude is something I wanted to turn into a video game. And I want to capture that experience, feel like you're connected with the people around the world. So one thing I want to talk about Journey a little bit is that when we make Journey, we are trying to see if we can make two people who play console games to really become a soulmate, to become a real friend. At the time when Journey was made, that was like 2010, people were saying like, I never want to play on Xbox. I never want to turn on my voice because people are assholes. Right? and
True.
You know, like you don't want to be yelled at by a teenager.
Still, until today, it's true.
So we were working on PlayStation, and that's the norm. That's the norm. Like people just assume online players are assholes. And so we were like, can we change that? Can we reveal the brighter side of human interactions? Because we humans are capable of being mean, and at the same time, we're also capable of being really nice. It's not that bad people all stop playing console games. That's what I don't believe, because I think I'm a good person who plays console games. And so what I realized is that vulnerability actually leads to human connection. So I will show you what I mean again. You know, like how like the big cats around the world usually, you know, can hunt alone, right? But somehow in Africa, they have to band up because they are actually weak against all the big animals. They can't capture them, you know, by themselves. And we human beings as social animals, our survival instincts somehow turn us to want to work with each other to survive. Because back then when we were just human in the wild, the world is filled with a sense of awe because you don't actually understand the world. You don't understand the predators, the weathers, everything seems to be so threatening. And you feel vulnerable. And the only way for us to survive is we have to band together. You know, and this is something in our DNA which let humans help humans, so we actually manage to, you know, survive and become the top of the food chain. So if you think about the console games back in 2010, they are known for being great at simulating power fantasies and freedoms. Most of the game is focusing on destroying things because it's fun. The problem with the fun gameplay is it makes you feel very powerful. Imagine if you are Superman and you run into Batman on Times Square. Would you give Batman a hug?
Undertale.
You probably would say, hey, dude, who's better? And so if you look at 2010, a lot of video games, when they meet each other, after they just kill each other, they do this thing called teabagging. You know, I don't know what they're doing there, crouch at each other's core. And that's because they're in some kind of competitive environment. They're trying to prove they're better than the other person. And they have no desire to rely on or trust or connect with this other person who's about to blow their heads off. So that's really the biggest problem back then with the console toxicity. So what we thought is, can we remove the empowerment on these typical online games, and would that actually make people like each other more? So what we did, you know, typically a video game, you are this big superhero with a big gun. and you just kill any monster in front of you. They're monsters, but they're weak, you know? And so that's what typical video game is. So we wanted to reverse that psychology. So you are the weakling. A monster can kill you pretty easily. That's more like back then when humans are still living in tribes, right? In typical console games, when two people meet, we want them to have a connection and have a friendship. How are you? I care about your feelings. But the mechanics in most of the competitive games do not allow any communication up to that. You just can't. You just cannot connect with people. So we thought, can we create a sense of awe? Can we make the player feel they are in the wild, they don't understand how the world works, the world is filled with mystery, and make them feel vulnerable. And so that's how they can potentially have opened up to themselves to each other and want to help each other. So that's kind of like the premise of Journey, and if you play Journey, you probably have been helped by somebody. And that's how we started to realize how to design games to promote compassion. Yeah, so these are the fan arts. A lot of you guys are great artists. I mean, we just start to realize as soon as our game is out, there's so much better artists out there good at painting our game than ourselves. So these are all fan art. And so fan art is made because someone felt strongly about an emotion and they want to capture that and share with others. That's also why we make video games, right? But it captures the emotions that people felt in Journey. So when we started working on Sky, okay, that's the last of Journey, all right? No more Journey talk. So we were looking for an image. We were looking for an image that would connect people beyond just 2 players. We want to connect 8 players together and make them feel that they're not alone. And so we were inspired by this painting by N.C. Wyeth. He's a very famous commercial illustrator. He makes these book covers. If you heard of Treasure Island, he was the painter of Treasure Island's cover. So he's a very successful commercial painter, and he has many children. There's like 5 children there. But his favorite student, what he thought is going to take over his career, be his prodigy, had, I think, tuberculosis, and he died at 27. And so this painter made this painting called The Giant. Looks like a fantasy setting, almost like Peter Pan land, where there's a cloud giant walking. But this little boy with the white hat is not the painter's children, but his student. So he made this painting for the funeral of his favorite student. And I was hoping that he and his children he described this is what he believed that his student is going to a world where it's filled with innocence and optimism and a sense of adventure. And so you can see this painting has a big influence on what we want the world of Sky to become. Yeah, that's the dude. So the other thing about the painting is he is known for romanticism. Romanticism is not about romance. It's about a sense of abstraction. It's not trying to make things look realistic. It's about capturing its truthful feelings. So I'll show you one painting here. Actually, I forgot who painted this. Someone very famous. But he wanted to capture how red the sunset is on the ocean. And he wanted to capture how when the sun shines through the ocean wave, it becomes green or teal. But there's so much abstraction he has to do because your paint can never be as bright as the sun. If you ever take a photo of a sunset, you will never capture that beautiful red sun disk because it's just gonna look white. And he's never gonna be able to capture the wave exactly he sees, but he exaggerates the size of the waves. He exaggerates the color of the green to make the red look pops out even more. And you can say this is not photorealistically correct, but the painting makes you feel, and the feeling that you've had is truthful to what the painter has experienced. That's the whole point of romanticism, capture the emotion. And with Flower, Journey, and Sky, we are pushing for this idea you can take romanticism from just painting or music into an interactive experience, a gameplay, the interaction between people. So these are the three emotions that we wanted to capture when we are initially thinking about the world of Sky. Number one is empathy of the human towards each other. You need to have vulnerability so that you actually feel like to connect with others. And then actually to build the community around connections. So on the other hand, there's many online games after we made Journey, and a lot of the games, it just feels like it's getting very dark and predatory. Games are pitching people against each other. Games that you have to pay money to revenge, or steal something while the other players are offline. And I was just thinking that we need to focus on something that is bright, to truthfully capture the bright side of the human capabilities. When we say humanity, we kind of just assume it's the positive side of humanity. We never celebrate the dark side of humanity. So those are the words we're thinking about, like if we can capture these feelings. And this is the first painting for a poster of the game done by Yui, our concept artist. And he's able to capture all these feelings in just this one painting. And we kind of build our game based on this initial sketch. So yeah, at that point, we don't really know what the game is. I know it has something to do with the orb, the Earth, because the feeling of you're connected to everything around the globe is something we want to capture. But we know it's an emotional experience, it's a social experience, it's an adventure that connects people. So that's kind of how we started working on Sky. It seems pretty simple, right? It took us 7 years to make. So how did we screw up? Turns out, humanity is not easy to wrangle with. We're both capable of being nice and capable of being the assholes. So how can we keep the sky bright is what took us a long time to understand. So we kind of have to design against what people are already used to on the internet. The rule is don't give guns to babies. You may not understand what that means right now, but I will explain to this. So have you guys heard of the Stanford prison experiment? Yeah. All right. So I don't have to dive too deep about that. But basically, they take two groups of the same people from the same school with the same background. They definitely have no mental illness. They divide the group into cops and prisoners. Turns out to be the most popular Minecraft Roblox game. Right? So the cops all wear shades so they can hide their emotions. Right? They're not vulnerable. They have emotional armors. And the prisoners, they're just prisoners. They have to do whatever the cops tell them to do. So initially they thought this was a fun experiment. People are kind of making jokes about each other. But very quickly, after a couple of weeks, people start to say, hey, yeah, you're the prisoner, you can do whatever we ask you to do. a lot of people break down, just like what happens in the real prison system. So this whole experiment was trying to fix the prison system abuse. But what they find out is just having two groups of people, well, one group is empowered to do whatever they can to the other group, terrible things will happen. And no matter how nice of a guy you are, no matter what religion you believe, if you are in this environment, the institution creates a situation around you that will affect your behavior. And you know, the effect of innate personality is much weaker when it's faced against the external situation. And without accountability, many people will do evil if given the power. And I'm sure you've heard of absolute power corrupts absolutely. And it's actually happening in YouTube comment sections. So, how can we change our institutions so we can promote human values, that is, rather than destroying human values? So the problem I learned about this, it was difficult. I learned this through the journey, but what I realized is our sense of morality, they don't carry to virtual worlds. You know, yeah, you could be a firefighter. Actually, I think someone did research among World of Warcraft players. The most mean person, the griefers, they have joy just torture other players, are firefighters and policemen. Because in their normal life, they're doing the very, the positive things, right? So when they go to the virtual world, they are the more creative. They like to do things that they couldn't do in the real life. So one thing about morality is that we did an experiment when we're developing Journey. There's this idea, because typical MMO, when you walk across someone, you can walk into their body. You can see the back of their teeth, right? Because there's no collision. Because online server, there's latency. So if you put collision there, you could be blocked while someone else is already moved away. So a lot of the games just have people cross each other, like what I just showed. And when we were designing Journey, we wanted to create a mechanics where people can help to lift each other up, and then that person can pull you back up, right? That's a small activity that connects two people and let them share the same goal and let them, kind of celebrate the success together. So it's a perfect activity. So we say, okay, why don't we make this possible, right? So we added the collision in the game. You can stand on top of someone to jump onto a rock. But in the test we did, instead of helping each other up, player enjoys more about pushing each other into very dangerous place. Right? And at the time, my CTO loves to kill me in the game. And even though we all understand we're trying to build a game where we make people fall into love of each other, or at least trust each other, but they just couldn't stop. It's just so much fun. So what happened is, for quite a while, I was really depressed because I was like, I thought humans are born good, but it's definitely not good. So one day I wrote to a child psychologist. I told her about my dissatisfaction about humanity. So she told me, what you describe something like you're managing babies. So babies don't understand what you're saying. Right? So if the baby is doing bad things, if you just go talk to the baby and say, hey, don't do this. If they understand don't do this means negative, that's one thing. But a lot of times when the baby was very young, they thought this is positive. Because let's say they throw the spoon at a table and make a big noise, and a massive bipedal mammal walk from the kitchen to pay attention to the baby. Isn't that a very positive reward? So then they would just knock it even louder to see what happens. That's what babies do. They want to test the boundaries. And that behavior is very much like the internet comment sections. They say something upsetting and something like, how could you say that? and then they get satisfaction from that. They're like, what else can I say to cause maximal reactions? So it either goes very funny or it goes very toxic. That's where the conversation goes. So the psychologist told me, if you don't want the baby to be a mean person, don't give this baby any feedback. Not even negative feedbacks, because sometimes they misinterpret it as positive. So that's what we started to do since Journey. So instead of letting player to push each other into a dangerous place where one person cry out loudly and die and looking at you waiting to revive them, that's a lot of feedback. We actually removed the collision just like other MMO games. Instead, we give you a different reward where just like in Sky or in Journey, if you touch each other, you give each other energies. Energies allows you to fly. And people love that. After we introduced this mechanics, instead of killing each other, people love each other. They just like to stay near each other. So they can charge off each other, and it's becoming lovey-dovey couples. Yeah. So that's a very simple institutional change of the environment, and it changed the behavior of the player. So when we start to work on the games, we also think, well, what else can we help to shape the morality of this society? Certainly we learn the morality in our real life by listening to what our teacher and parents tell us, right? Stories. So we want to create a culture to influence our players' behavior. And so we change the word setting. We make the world is unified. Like players and live animals, they are all heading towards the same direction. There's a level of affinity rather than fighting each other. Even the story of the non-player characters shows them people, the bright side of a civilization, where people enjoy what they're working on and help each other to make the world a better place. And we selectively to not show like how you can, kill or murder other people's family in this world of Sky. So one thing you would think this is an easy task, but it's like whack-a-mole. You fix one problem, and then some other problem shows up. So in 7 years, we have a lot of problems in kind of designing the game to maintain the toxicity of the game. So originally we had 2 bench where you can have 2 players sitting on the bench, and they usually have relatively good first time experience talking to each other. One time a player says, why don't we have a bench of a bigger party so everybody can jump in and have a free chat? And what happened is there's this well-known people in the beta community likes to use all kinds of sexual emote. And he would jump on the chair and say a bunch of disturbing things and jump out. And so this is the classic machine gun in the baby situation. Or you give a kid a megaphone in a plaza, right? The kid's gonna try to say something outrageous, but you can't see him. You cannot find who did that. I have done some naughty stuff when I was a kid, when I know I'm invulnerable because I'm hidden, right? And so in the case of Sky, the chair actually makes the griefer believe these people are listening, so he feels incentivized to jump on and do maximum damage and run away without any penalties. And eventually we had to change the seats back to just 2, because if you see one person is sitting there, you don't know if he's AFK or not. You could jump on and say a bunch of nasty stuff. That person may not be even listening. It makes yourself look stupid. So that's why if you find a bench in the world, it's always 2 seats. Two chat seats only. And the other thing is we learned we have to give people accountabilities. In real life, if if we do something very terrible in front of a public, if you're giving a speech, you feel a little bit nervous. It's that feeling of you're standing on a tall building. You could just fall and die. Because back then when we lived in the tribes, if you say something offensive to the entire tribe, if you anger the entire tribe, that means you will die very soon. Not that people is going to murder you, but when there's no food, they're not going to give their food to you, right? And you committed social suicide. That's why we talk to a group of people, we're very nervous, because back then in the tribal time, it's life or death, basically. But when you speak on the internet, you have no consequence. Your life is not at threat. So I'll tell you an early example. So earlier in Sky, during the early days, I forgot which season, but we bring in this idea that you can leave nice messages for your friend. So what happened is there's so many, internet comments you would expect everywhere in the world. We were like, man, we really did get disappointed of humanity one more time. And so we were like, okay, how are we going to solve this problem? We have to learn it from real life. Like in real life, why do you not write terrible things on papers and stick them on the street? Well, some people do graffitis. They have to do it in the night because they're invulnerable, right? They're invincible. So they're doing terrible things. But in the daylight, nobody's going to do that. And so we realized that there's no way our computer or AI is smart enough to detect how people can say terrible things with their creative combination of emotes and ASCII code. The only way we can censor that is we're going to rely on someone to look at it. So initially we thought, maybe we should just have anybody to look at a message first to say this is not terrible, then put it on the internet. But we realized a lot of people say these terrible things, trying to just target towards strangers. But they would not say that things to a friend. They would not say that thing in the family because they know they have social consequence by saying these terrible things to the friends. So we added the system where your message will be visible to your friends and your name will be on it. So as soon as we roll out the system, I hear a lot of players saying, I better log up. I have to kind of wipe out all my terrible messages before my friends can see them. And so that's how we designed the system. We just find whack-a-moles, terrible humanities traits comes out, we just plug it. So it's kind of like this maintaining a garden, right? So now we have, before your post is seen by the public, 3 of your friends has to say, this is a nice post. And then you'll be seen by the public. So that's how we were able to make the community feel a lot better than the internet. And the other thing is also, we learned this by mistake. You have to always ask consent to keep the social experience in the control of the player. So on the internet, if you play an online game, you will get onto the lobby of a mobile game, and you will see people are either selling you ads, or people trying to say some really racist stuff, trying to spur the conversation. And we really don't like that because, again, the people who's committing the toxicity is invisible, and they can get away from it. So instead of letting players talk to you right away, we actually created a frictions. So instead of letting people to name themselves as offensive, we remove that possibility. We give the player the chance to name each other. And once you can name other people, you would never worry about other people making offensive names. Also, in order to hold hands or give each other a hug or even unlock chat, you would need to build the trust first. A lot of people like to hop on the server and say something terrible and then hop off.
Yeah.
But if you haven't built a relationship with them, they can't hear you. In real life, it's very much like this. Why don't we tell our best friend something terrible? Why don't we speak to them with very dirty stuff? Because we spend a long time to build a relationship. We don't want to ruin the relationship. The higher the entry barrier is, the nicer the people behave socially. I don't know why. So in Sky, we intentionally put chat all the way up. You have to put time. You have to get the other players' trust to level up the relationships. So you won't see their chat content until you reach all the way here. So this really changed what you hear from the other player. By creating the investment, then they're less likely to be the assholes. And then we have some other feature like the teleport to the other player. That could be kind of very harassment and stalk feeling. So we push it to be very high level of investment. And still, sometimes this becomes a harassment. We have a way to block it. Right? Same thing with chat. You have a way to block it. We want the player to have the full control to protect themselves. And some of the more kind of aggressive emotes, that's way for the high level trust. Yeah, so right, when this happened, I was very shocked. They all really trust each other. So how's time going? I think this might be a good place to stop for some Q&A. Yeah. Okay. Dreams come true. We feel like the industry was so aiming towards competitive games for masculine audience, and we love games, so we want to see games to be loved by everybody. So we focus on content that's more accessible to a wider audience, to children, to women, and to older people. Yeah, I mean that is the dream, but it's really good to see all kinds of people here. Yeah, here. You mean like, are you saying basically if I play Sky and I feel a sense of kindness, would I carry the kindness to the other game? I think to some extent it's working to extend like a movie. Sometimes I watch a movie, I got so carried out by the character and the way he or she approached things that I will kind of approach my life like that for a couple of days. But usually it doesn't last forever. Yeah, and I think if you drop me back into Call of Duty, I'm sure in a few hours I will be an asshole. Yeah. Oh, over there.
What brought the idea to have like a death be part of the main cycle of the game?
Having deaths to be the main cycle. Well, technically you're not dead. Yeah, I mean, video game rarely has real deaths. The real deaths in a video game means you lose your account, you lose your connection with everything. Nothing is saved, right? It's a big deal, but if you're just restarting, it's kind of like more of a failure. I think the concept of death is something we inherited from working on Journey. We want to create a strong emotional experience for the player to share with each other. And then you need to have a very dramatic story. And if you are familiar with Hollywood, well, it's right over here, they have this concept called the hero's journey, where basically there's a writer, he's a professor who studied literatures. His name is Joseph Campbell. He read all the books for 10 years straight from all the continents. And he starts to see this pattern. It's kind of like these days we call it big data, machine learning, but he just did that with his brain. He see the pattern of all the stories from native Indian tribal stories to Greek mythology to Eastern kind of Sanskrit. And he sees all the stories share the same thing. It's almost like all the heroes from all the different culture and religions are all the same character. They all went through this initial call to adventure because some terrible thing happened to their community. They have to do something to save the community. And they go on a wild journey, going through a lot of ordeal and meet the mentor and have friends to help them. And eventually, before they succeed at bringing a positive change, they always go through this when all is lost moment. As if you just rob the bank and become a millionaire, that's not a very interesting story. If you rob the bank and all your teammates died and you barely got caught and eventually you become a millionaire, that's getting a little bit more interesting, right? And so for a story was to be told and spread, the challenge has to be so close to death, and for the hero to crawl back, literally from hell, to achieve some big feat. Right? Then that's a story was to be shared. Now there's one last thing about the hero's journey, which I find is very important that people don't talk about, is that after the hero robbed the bank, he can't just spend the money on himself. The hero has to help the community. He has to take the money back, in this case like Robin Hood, right? But yeah, those are the only stories that people would want to tell each other. And there's something about that. It's just built in the human psyche. I don't understand exactly why it's working that way, but we were trying to learn from the masters of the storytellers. Yeah. All right, any questions? Over there. Sorry, you gotta say it louder.
Yeah, before each mission of seasonal testing, we chat, when we communicate with the other players in a big mission.
Oh, you're thinking that we might be working on a chat feature without building friendship first, just during the mission, right? Okay.
True.
That's how our system is working on you. Yeah, we were hoping that making the mission difficult, you would actually form some friendship, but you still need to get the consent from the other person so they can help you. Right now, we have this thing that's kind of breaking the game a little bit, which is the table. You remember the two-player bench problem? When veteran put a table in the newbie town, there's always terrible people on the table. I don't know if you write to them before. There's so many times I want to take the table out. But I know a lot of people use that for surfing. So yeah, we're kind of stuck with that table right now, honestly.
Big table.
Yeah, I don't have a plan, but I understand your frustration. Yes. For keeping the table. That's fine.
Hi. You talked a lot about how your inspiration for your early games in Sky was born out of frustration with the way games were and what was out there at the time. Do you feel like your games and the company have made an impact in making positive change and sort of opening up for other companies to
是真的2万，而且是可以充100，而且是100。
I think it's to some extent, right? I think the people in this room is going to help us to make the change. And it's the player who play games like this, then they understand the game can be designed better, right? And they will have demand for other games to do similar things. Yeah, and so I think we have managed to create a lot of people who likes to follow, like copy some of the mechanics we did. So that's definitely an impact. Yeah, but I think it's more important of the player who will play this game. In the future, they will go into the industry. We actually have a lot of developers now who are from the Sky community, right? And I think when they, form their own company, when they join other companies, they're going to influence the games. Yeah, it's going to take some time. Yeah. Oh, over there. Yeah.
When we have the ability to delete friends instead of blocking them.
Sorry.
When will we have the ability to delete a friend instead of blocking them because blocking is quite mean?
Yeah, so this is an interesting part because I don't fully understand the problem of deleting versus blocking because conceptually, if you block someone, you will not be bothered by this person. And the only reason you still see that person in your block list is so you can bring them back. So I don't really understand why people are so demanding on changing the words blocking to delete. And they ask me to make it a delete function, but really on the database side, it's exactly the same. So I want to ask you, what is it about delete you really care about than the block feature?
I'll say for delete, I have I am not connected with that person anymore. Like he might go to do other stuff in life or don't play the game anymore. And if you want to change, like go back one day and I just log in and because the friend list is kind of limited, so I already have like 100 friends right now. So and some people don't play the game anymore, and logging them is just doesn't feel nice.
So you're saying if you sell this account to someone else, you don't want that person to automatically block 100 people?
I mean, assuming I'm selling, like I will never do, but assuming I'm selling, first
if
of
you
all,
sell the account, you will be banned.
I will never do that.
But again, if maybe we can follow up on this because I want to understand if there's anything that is going to help people with delete. Yeah.
会否是技术上会否实际上就实际上它的 terminal service 是说
Block skills what?
很多人我也知道我家对吧？我也
That's what I thought block is. Remove is delete, right? Block is you don't like this person for now, you want to temporarily just not be bothered by them. You block them and we do everything we can to make sure that person doesn't even know you did that. Right? So you have least amount of social stress. Okay. If all we need to do is change the words, we will do that.
I think blocking, essentially, it removes the option to interact with them versus some people I've been friends with, but I want to just release them. And I would love the opportunity to sort of run into them in the game again without them being removed.
Okay, I see.
Which I think is very different from blocking.
So when we first implemented block, we have people who ask us to make the feature waterproof. They don't want their friends to see their social feeds they put on the ground. They don't want their friends, recently, they don't want their friends to even notice they're changing their clothes. Right? they just don't want their friends to notice that. And a lot of times, initially we don't prevent you from forming a relationship with the same person again, but they would bump into them because they have mutual friends. So they could tell that person is that person, the exact person they blocked, right? And they don't like that feeling. Right? It's like running into your ex-girlfriend in the cafeteria with the new girlfriend. And so they would rather not see that person, or not let the other person see them. So that's why we go all the way through to give basically visibility to the one. But if you want a simple feature of like, hey, I thought we have a friend, but we're not, but let's be a friend again. That would be delete, right? So you delete the friendship, but you can just bump into the same person and you can form a relationship again. If that is a request feature, we will give you something like that, yeah. But it's really less safe than block. Okay. It's called cancel friendship. It's past, it didn't happen. Let's restart. Okay.
So I know that nowadays when used to play the president, not always connect, but nowadays with Peloton and other things, I have many friends who I made new, but now that they all moved on, like they don't play anymore. So currently, like when we try to make friends, some people are either there to like get to the new season, and maybe they just want to keep, and they don't really want to make friends. So do you have any incentives? I think sometimes the common experience is that like we're trying to fight that person, but they
Yeah, I've been thinking about this problem. What people say it's harder to make friends today compared to when they first started playing the game. I think there's two sides. There's first, when they first start playing the game, they don't know the game, so they're vulnerable, and so they want to get help. So they're much more likely to make a friend, ask them about the game. But if you play for the game for 3 years, you know the whole park from inside out. So you don't feel the need to ask someone about something, right? You just get online, do a daily quest, and, get offline. So
That's me.
yeah, that does make people less likely to make friends. And so the thing we can do is to bring something new that you're not familiar with again, right? I kind of noticed that every time we bring some new gameplay system, people are more likely to get online. But if it's the same system, then people are less likely to ask questions. Alternatively, is if we bring new players, then the new player is always open to form a relationship. There's a third angle, we're currently planning, but we have not released anything yet, is to come up with new ways for people to find a reason to know each other. Yeah. You again.
Have you formed any relationships through Sky that are memorable?
Yeah. There's quite a lot actually, but the most memorable relationship is actually my mother-in-law. So she is not a gamer, and she just finds it strange. Like her son-in-law is working on this game and seems to be like doing well. So she's like curious about what's going on in this thing. So she got an account, and for 3 weeks he keep complaining to me. It's like, what? How is this game supposed to work? She's 67, right? So it's like, I don't know how to play the game. Can you just find me a tour guide? I'm willing to pay someone to be my tour guide. And I will try to explain to her how to play. Eventually, after 3 weeks, she ran into someone from Asia that's willing to take her around. And then she's really into the game. And so one day she called me. She said, "Hey Jonova, I need to know where this player lives. I'm like, yeah, okay. I cannot give you the information, and we are not collecting these information. And she said, but this is life threatening. I said, what's going on? She said, well, I have a friend who is, who is a psychiatrist. She lives in Switzerland. And she and I hang out with this teenage girl from Ireland. And my doctor friend says she could diagnose depression. So she told me that this teenager, 17-year-old girl, is stage 3 depression. So she's at the risk of killing herself. And I was like, man, that's not something I can handle. You should call the police, right, or something. But she's asking me where does the girl live so they could call the police. And I said, look, I don't have any information about where they live. I don't think this is something I can say as suicide prevention. And so my mother-in-law gave up on me, but she's still going. And so somehow she and the doctor find out in one of their threads, they were chatting on Facebook. The girl gave them a photo of the street where she lives. And they were doing photo searching in Ireland, looking for the exact matching of the house. And eventually they find the house. So they called the local police chief. They say, hey, I'm an old lady from California. you have a domestic abuse case in your neighborhood. Basically, the girl was beat up by the parents during COVID, and the parents doesn't even let her to see the hospital. That's maybe COVID restrictions. So the girl tried to kill herself and failed. Beat up again. Tell my mother-in-law about what happened. So they really feel they have to do something. So eventually they called the local chief, and it turns out to be another woman who would trust a Californian 67-year-old lady and a Swiss doctor to convince them there's a domestic abuse case. And eventually they find the father and they put him under whatever they call it, watch, right? If he ever put his hands on the daughter will be taken away by the community. Yeah, so that's like a crazy internet story, I would never trust this story if it was not my own mother-in-law, yeah. Okay, I think you were raising your hands? Yes.
Yeah. Hi, thank you. So the question that I had was in regards to what you were saying about how you presenting games in a sort of non-violent fashion, competitive method. It kind of made me think of two games in particular, one being Moon, and then the other one being Undertale. And then I wanted to know if you had played those games.
I only played Undertale, not Moon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Moon was, I think, recently re-released, so I would say you might want to check that out for that sort of same experience that Sky is trying to present.
I see. Yeah, I think there's quite a few indie games after Journey have been a spiritual siblings of our games, like Celeste. It's another journey, but about depression, and Grace. Grace is also a very journey-like experience. All right, I guess that's it. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming.
Jonova Chen, everybody. Thank you guys very much. Please do take your time to have some cupcakes, have some drinks, do some crafting in the corner. We also are looking for the possibility of having some of you guys actually be interviewed and let us know how you feel about your experience with Sky And in fact, the person running this event is going to be Stephanie right here. And she's going to be outside running this interview. So if you wouldn't mind and if you'd like to put your face out there to people to see how much you appreciate and enjoy your experience in the sky, please come meet with Stephanie. Rob. Alright guys, enjoy yourselves.